My name is Hilda Morse. I'm 35 years old, and for 4 years I believed I was building a life with a man who was quietly preparing to leave it. When people ask how long we were together, I always say 4 years, like it's a single number, neat and contained. But it wasn't 4 years. It was hundreds of ordinary mornings, shared grocery lists, inside jokes that only made sense at midnight, and a shared belief that we were moving in the same direction, even if we hadn't fully decided where that direction led yet. We met when I was 31. He was charming in a restless way, the kind of man who talked about ideas instead of plans, possibilities instead of commitments. At the time, I found that intoxicating. He made the world feel bigger, less predictable, less settled. I told myself that his curiosity meant depth, that his constant looking forward meant ambition, not avoidance. We moved in together after 18 months, a downtown apartment with tall windows and thin walls, the kind of place that made us feel like real adults with real lives. We split everything evenly: rent, groceries, responsibilities. We both worked hard, both did well enough to enjoy life instead of surviving it. Trips, restaurants with waiting lists, weekends that blurred into each other because nothing urgent was ever wrong. From the outside, we looked solid. I believed we were. The restlessness didn't arrive all at once. It leaked in slowly, disguised as curiosity. Comments about cities he'd visited once and never stopped talking about. Job postings he wasn't applying for, just reading. Conversations about who he might be in another life, another place, another version of himself that didn't include our routines, our apartment, or me. When I asked if he was unhappy, he laughed it off, said no. Said he just liked keeping his options open. Said curiosity didn't mean dissatisfaction. I wanted to believe that. 6 months before everything ended, he got an offer. A different city, a better title, more money, the kind of opportunity people frame as destiny when it works out, and a learning experience when it doesn't. He told me over dinner like it was a thought experiment. I got an offer today, he said casually, like he was telling me about a new show he wanted to watch. That sounds huge, I said. Are you taking it? He hesitated, just long enough for the silence to stretch. I don't know, he said. It would mean leaving. Leaving wasn't a metaphor. We both knew that. We could make it work, I offered. Long distance, or I could look for something there too. He didn't answer. Just changed the subject. Talked about something trivial, something safe. Anything but the conversation that was clearly waiting for us. A week later, he brought it up again. This time sitting on the edge of the bed, not looking at me. I've been thinking, he said, and I want to take the job, but I need to go alone. Alone. Alone, how I asked, even though I already knew. I need to figure out who I am without this, he said quietly. Without the relationship. Without the routine. Without me. So, you want to break up? I don't know, he said. Maybe. Or maybe just take a break. See how I feel once I have some distance. That word distance settled into my chest like a weight. You don't pause relationships like a video game, I said. You don't just leave and expect everything to stay exactly where it was. Why not, he asked. If we're meant to be, we'll find our way back. I stared at him, finally understanding what he was really asking. While you figure yourself out, I said, what am I supposed to do? He didn't answer. Wait, I continued. Put my life on hold while you decide if there's something better out there. I'm not asking you to wait. Then he looked directly at me and said the sentence that changed everything. Don't wait for me. I might not come back. He said it calmly, honestly, like he was doing me a favor by being transparent. And in that moment, I saw it. The truth I'd been circling for months. He wasn't unsure. He wasn't conflicted. He had already chosen. This conversation wasn't a negotiation. It was an announcement. I could have begged. I could have cried. I could have tried to compete with a future that didn't include me. Instead, I nodded. Okay, I said. If you need to go, go. I'm not going to beg you to stay. He looked surprised, maybe disappointed, like he expected me to fight harder for a place he'd already decided to leave. 2 weeks later, he was gone. And I was standing in the quiet he left behind, realizing that not waiting would be the most irreversible decision of my life. He didn't leave in a dramatic way. No final argument. No tearful goodbye at the door. I came home from work one evening and realized the apartment sounded wrong. Too quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. His shoes were gone from the entryway. The jacket he always hung on the back of the chair wasn't there. Half the closet was empty. On the kitchen counter sat a folded piece of paper placed carefully, like he'd wanted it to look respectful. I took my things while you were at work. I'll come back for the furniture later. We can figure out how to split everything once I'm settled. Once he was settled. Once his new life felt organized enough to acknowledge the old one. I didn't reply. Not because I was trying to make a statement, but because there was nothing left to say. The conversation had already happened. The decision had already been made. This was just logistics pretending to be closure. That first night I walked from room to room like a stranger in my own home. Every surface carried a memory. The couch where we spent entire Sundays. The dining table where we ate late dinners and talked about plans we never fully committed to. The bed I didn't sit on it. I couldn't yet. The apartment felt too big and too small at the same time. People assume the hardest part is the silence. It isn't. The hardest part is realizing how much of your life has been quietly shaped around someone who no longer exists in it. I took one day to grieve. Just one. I let myself sit on the floor with my back against the couch and cry until my head hurt and my chest felt scraped raw. I replayed conversations, looked for moments I might have missed, signs I should have seen earlier, and then something inside me hardened. Not bitterness, clarity. The next morning I started changing everything. I didn't do it slowly. I didn't ease into it. I needed visible proof that this wasn't a waiting room, that this wasn't a temporary pause until he decided whether to return. I repainted every room. Neutral colors replaced the tones we'd picked together. I sold the furniture, all of it. The couch, the table, the bed. People asked if that wasn't extreme. It wasn't. It was survival. Every object he'd touched felt like a question mark, like a reminder that I might still be expected to preserve space for him. I refused to do that. If he could choose himself, I could choose myself too. The apartment became mine, not ours, mine. That was the first irreversible change, though I didn't fully understand that yet. The second came quieter. A week after he left, someone asked if I wanted to be set up with a friend of a friend. I almost said no automatically. The old reflex. The loyalty that lingers even after it's no longer required. Then I heard his voice in my head. Don't wait for me. So I didn't. I didn't download apps in a frenzy or throw myself into distractions. I was deliberate, intentional. I decided that if I was going to meet someone, it would be because I was genuinely open to something new, not because I was trying to replace what I'd lost. Dating after abandonment is strange. You're both fragile and sharp-edged at the same time. Hyper-aware of red flags, intolerant of ambiguity, allergic to half-answers. I wasn't looking for excitement. I was looking for presence. 2 months after he left, I met someone at a birthday party. A mutual friend introduced us casually without expectation. He wasn't flashy, didn't dominate the room, didn't talk about all the places he might someday go. He talked about where he already was. He worked in education, 3rd grade, spoke about his students with warmth instead of irony, asked me questions and actually waited for the answers, didn't flinch when I mentioned my ex, didn't rush to fill silences. Being with him felt steady. And that steadiness terrified me at first, because I realized how much chaos I'd normalized. We took it slow, on purpose. No declarations, no future promises, just consistency, just showing up. And somewhere in that calm, without fireworks or dramatic turning points, I started to feel something unfamiliar. Safe. 3 months after my ex left, while I was sitting in a meeting at work, my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen on my screen in months. Hey, how are you? I stared at the message longer than I expected to. Not because I missed him, but because I knew this moment had been coming, the moment where he checked to see if the door was still unlocked. I replied politely, briefly. Good, you. He said he was settling in, said the job was intense, said the city felt different, said he was still figuring things out. I told him the apartment was different now. He asked how. I told him the truth. He didn't respond for an hour. When my phone buzzed again, the message was shorter. You moved on pretty fast. I looked at the words and felt something unexpected. Not guilt. Relief. Because in that moment, I knew something he didn't yet understand. I hadn't moved on fast. I had simply listened when he told me not to wait. And he wasn't prepared for that. I didn't respond to that message right away. You moved on pretty fast. It wasn't an accusation exactly, but it wasn't neutral either. It carried something heavier beneath it, surprise, maybe even disappointment. Like he'd expected to check in and find everything preserved exactly as he'd left it. Like time was supposed to pause in his absence. Eventually I replied, You told me not to wait. I didn't. That was the truth. Clean, undeniable. There was no response after that. Not for the rest of the afternoon. Not through dinner. Not while I stood in my kitchen, chopping vegetables beside a man who asked me how my day had been and actually listened to the answer. That contrast hit me harder than I expected. The man standing next to me, Daniel Mercer, wasn't loud about his intentions. He didn't talk about what-ifs or somedays. He talked about next week, about lesson plans, about a book he was halfway through and excited to finish. When he said he'd call, he did. When he made plans, he showed up 5 minutes early. No drama, no mystery, no disappearing acts disguised as self-discovery. At first, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Old habits don't die quietly. They whisper, they ask questions you didn't invite. What if this is temporary? What if he gets bored? What if one day he wakes up restless too? But Daniel didn't give those fears room to grow. 3 months into seeing each other, my ex finally texted again. I didn't expect you to actually start seeing someone. I stared at that sentence for a long time. What did you expect? I typed, then deleted. You left, I typed, then erased again. I chose honesty over cruelty. I'm dating someone, yes. A few seconds passed, then minutes. It just seems fast, he wrote. We were together 4 years. I felt my jaw tighten, irritation flickering beneath my calm. You left, I replied. You told me not to wait. I know. I just thought, I don't know. I thought there'd be a period where nothing really changed. There it was. He hadn't wanted commitment, but he had wanted permanence. Nothing changed for you, I typed. Everything changed for me. He didn't answer after that. Not until later that night, past midnight, the hour people reach for things they already lost. I miss you. The words didn't do what he probably hoped they would. They didn't soften me. They didn't pull me back. They just felt late. You made your choice, I replied. Missing me doesn't undo that. Can we talk, he asked. I just want to hear your voice. I hesitated. I knew better. I knew conversations like that don't end cleanly. They unravel, stretch reopen wounds that are finally starting to close. But part of me wanted to be done, truly done. And sometimes the only way to end something is to face it directly. So I called. His voice sounded familiar. Too familiar, like muscle memory. Hi, he said softly. What do you want, I asked. Not cold, just clear. I want to know if there's any chance, he said. Any chance we find our way back. No, I said. Silence. Just like that, he asked. Yes. It's only been 3 months. You told me not to wait. I didn't think you'd actually start dating someone else. That's on you, I said, not me. He sighed shaky. I thought you'd take time, heal, process. I did, I said. I just didn't do it alone. That hurt him. I could hear it. You barely know him, he said. 3 months isn't enough time to know anything. It's enough time to know he doesn't need to leave to figure out if he wants to be with me. He went quiet after that. I didn't fill the space. I made a mistake, he said eventually. Maybe, I replied, but it's too late. He cried then, quietly. The sound didn't move me the way it once would have. I ended the call. He called back. 3 times. I didn't answer. That night, Daniel came over. We cooked dinner together. Pasta, his favorite. My phone buzzed again on the counter, his name lighting up the screen like a ghost refusing to fade. I ignored it. You should answer if you need to, Daniel said gently. No jealousy, no pressure. I don't need to, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. He smiled, kissed my temple, and kept stirring the sauce. And in that moment, standing in a kitchen that no longer felt haunted, I realized something quietly monumental. I hadn't replaced my ex. I had outgrown him. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought hearing no so clearly would force him to accept reality, to finally understand that the door he walked through had locked behind him the moment he chose to leave. I underestimated how difficult it is for some people to accept consequences they didn't plan for. A month passed. Life settled into something almost peaceful. Daniel and I slipped into a rhythm that felt earned instead of assumed. Weeknight dinners, lazy Sundays, small plans that didn't feel like rehearsals for escape. Then my phone rang. His name. I stared at it, annoyance flickering through the calm I'd built so carefully. I answered. What I said not unkindly, but not inviting him in either. I quit my job, he blurted out. I blinked. Okay. The one I left you for, he continued like that detail would change something. I'm moving back. I leaned against the counter, exhaled slowly. Why are you telling me this? Because it changes things, he said. I'm not running anymore. I'm choosing you. The words would have thrilled me once. I remembered a version of myself who would have clung to them, dissected them, convinced herself they meant redemption. That version of me was gone. You're not choosing me, I said. You're choosing familiarity. That's not fair. It is, I replied calmly. If that job had worked out, you'd still be there. You're coming back because it didn't. Silence. We'll be in the same city again, he said. We'll see each other. You can't pretend I don't exist. I can, I said, and I will. You're really not going to give me another chance, he asked. After 4 years. You left those 4 years behind, I said. You don't get to pick them up again when it's convenient. He was crying again, always crying when he ran out of arguments. I loved you, he said. I still do. Love isn't enough when you're not willing to stay, I replied. I'm done. I hung up, blocked his number, blocked his social media, every platform, every access point. Done. A week later, Daniel and I were cooking dinner when the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped. I knew before I opened it. He stood there with 2 cups of coffee from our old favorite place. Same order. Same pathetic nostalgia tactic. I just want an hour, he said. Please. I should have closed the door. Instead, I let him in. He looked around the apartment like he'd walked into someone else's life because he had. This doesn't feel like our place, he said. It isn't, I replied. It's mine. We sat. He pleaded. He apologized. He swore he'd changed. I listened. And then I told him the truth. You'll leave again, I said. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next year. But you will. And I won't survive that twice. This is because of him, he snapped. You're choosing him over 4 years. No, I said. I'm choosing myself. He left furious, humiliated, broken. And I cleaned up the coffee cups he'd brought the last physical trace of a life I no longer wanted. After that night, I truly believed that he would finally disappear. He'd shown up uninvited. He'd begged. He'd been told no to his face in a space that no longer belonged to him. There was nothing left to misunderstand, nothing left to interpret generously. I was wrong. A few weeks later, mutual friends started slipping his name into conversations like a test balloon. He moved back for good. Someone mentioned casually watching my reaction. I didn't give them one. He's taking a smaller job now, another said, as if that were some kind of sacrifice I should acknowledge. I nodded, uninterested. What they didn't understand, and what he still hadn't accepted, was that proximity doesn't equal access. Being in the same city doesn't mean being in the same life. Then one night, my phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. I answered by mistake. It's me, he said immediately, like the words alone should unlock something. I hung up. The number called back, again and again. I blocked it. The next morning there was an email. I know you blocked me. I just need you to hear this one thing. I didn't reply. 2 days later, he left a note with the building concierge. I didn't read it. There's a specific kind of desperation that sets in when someone realizes they're no longer being rejected, they're being ignored. Rejection invites debate. Silence doesn't. Daniel noticed before I said anything. You okay? He asked one evening while we were folding laundry together. He's back, I said simply. Daniel didn't tense, didn't ask questions loaded with insecurity. He just nodded. And it doesn't change anything I said. And hearing it out loud felt grounding. A week later, my ex made his final attempt. He caught me outside my office. I didn't see him until he said my name. I froze not in fear, but in disbelief. The audacity still surprised me. I just need 5 minutes, he said quickly. I won't follow you. I won't push. Just 5 minutes. I looked at him. Really looked. He seemed smaller somehow. Not physically, but energetically. Like someone who had gambled on certainty and lost. 5 minutes, I said. Here. We stood on the sidewalk like strangers. I messed up, he said. I know that now. I thought I needed to leave to grow. Turns out I just needed to stay. I didn't interrupt. I'm here, he continued. I'm not going anywhere. I want to build something with you. I'm ready. You were ready before I said. You just didn't choose it. That's not fair, he said, frustrated. People are allowed to change. They are, I agreed. But they're not entitled to return. His face crumpled. So that's it. 4 years just erased. No, I said calmly. 4 years taught me what I won't accept again. He stared at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't know. This is because of him, he said finally. If he wasn't there, I would still say no, I interrupted. Because the problem was never another person. It was you leaving. Silence fell between us. Loud, final. I really loved you, he said. Maybe, I replied. But love that leaves isn't love I want. I walked away before he could respond. That night, Daniel cooked dinner. Didn't ask questions. Didn't push me to explain. Just handed me a glass of wine and said, You don't have to carry that anymore. And he was right. Because the truth was simple, even if it was painful. He didn't lose me when I fell for someone else. He lost me the moment he told me not to wait and assumed I wouldn't listen. After that encounter outside my office, something finally went quiet. Not the world, just him. No new numbers calling, no emails slipping past filters, no messages delivered through mutual friends pretending to be concerned. For the first time since he left, my life felt uninterrupted. Daniel and I didn't talk about it much. We didn't need to. He never asked me to reassure him, never demanded proof that I was over it. He trusted what I showed him every day, that I chose him in small, consistent ways the same way he chose me. That kind of trust had once scared me. Now it felt like home. A month later, on the anniversary of when Daniel and I first met, he proposed. No spectacle, no crowd. Just the two of us in the apartment I had rebuilt from the inside out. Yes, I said immediately. No hesitation, no fear, no need to figure myself out. The right person doesn't make you restless. Word travels faster than you expect. My ex heard about the engagement through friends. I didn't know how he reacted. I didn't ask. 2 months after that, he tried one last time indirectly. A thick envelope arrived at my parents' house. My mother called to tell me, her voice cautious. I didn't open it, she said. I thought I should ask you first. Throw it away, I said, unread. She paused. Are you sure? Yes. Because whatever he'd written, apologies, realizations, regrets, they were all too late. Closure isn't something someone else gives you. It's something you decide you no longer need. We got married quietly, intentionally, surrounded by people who had never questioned whether we were worth choosing. I felt light that day. Not vindicated, not triumphant, just done. Later I heard he tried to come to the wedding. That security turned him away, that he stood outside in a suit watching a life he no longer had access to. I didn't feel cruel about it. I felt free. The irreversible change I made while he was gone wasn't repainting the walls or replacing the furniture. It was letting go without leaving a door open. When someone tells you not to wait, believe them. And when you finally stop waiting, really, stop, you don't just move on. You move forward. It's been 2 years since he left. 18 months since I blocked his number, his emails, every possible way he could reach me. 1 year since I said yes to a man who never once made me feel like a temporary option. 6 months since I became a wife. Marriage didn't change my life in the dramatic way people like to describe. There was no sudden transformation, no cinematic shift. What it did was confirm something I already knew, that stability isn't boring when it's built on mutual choice. That love doesn't feel heavy when no one is threatening to leave. Daniel is present every day, not performatively, not loudly, just consistently. He doesn't need distance to understand what we have. He doesn't need to lose me to value me. He chose me once, and then he kept choosing me. That's the difference. I heard about my ex occasionally, always secondhand. Mutual friends mentioned that he really had moved back for good, that he'd taken a job that paid less than the one he'd left for, that his apartment was smaller, that his life looked by most external measures like a downgrade. Someone once asked me if I felt responsible. If you'd taken him back, they said carefully, maybe things would have been different for him. I shook my head. No, I said. He made his choices, all of them. He wasn't a victim of bad timing or cruel circumstances. He wasn't unlucky. He was someone who believed he could leave a life behind and return to it unchanged. Someone who thought love would wait patiently on a shelf while he explored other possibilities. It doesn't work that way. Apparently, he tried to come to my wedding, dressed up, confident maybe that seeing me would stir something, that proximity would reopen a door he refused to believe was closed. Security turned him away. I had given them his photo weeks earlier, not out of spite, but out of foresight. I didn't want disruption on a day that was pure. I didn't want the past contaminating something I'd worked hard to build. He sent a letter to my parents' house after that. Thick, multiple pages. I didn't open it. Whatever he needed to say, he'd already said too late. The last I heard, he's still in the city, still single, still dealing with the quiet consequences of believing the grass was greener, of believing he could do better leave and come back whenever he was ready. The irreversible change I made while he was gone wasn't cosmetic. It wasn't the paint. It wasn't the furniture. It wasn't even falling in love again. It was letting go completely, not waiting, not hoping, not preserving space for someone who had already chosen to leave. When he said, "Don't wait for me," I might not come back. I took him at his word. I respected his honesty. And in doing so, I respected myself. He came back. But by then, I was already gone. And that's the price of leaving someone who actually listens when you tell them not to wait. They don't. They move on. They build something new, and you don't get to be part of it.